And I'm Jessica,
and welcome to No Man, Nomads,
a podcast about international teaching, travel, and life.
We met in our undergrad music program in Minnesota and are now both international music teachers.
I just finished teaching in Kazakhstan and now I'm working for a school in Panama.
And I just finished working in Turkmenistan and now I will be teaching in a school in China.
As of right now, Laura and I are both spending the summer and potentially longer living it up in our parents' houses in good old Minnesota.
Yes, and if you haven't yet, please don't forget to check out our Instagram. We post lots of extra things there, reminders, and this week we'll even be adding some pictures to go along with the places that we're talking about. So it's at No Man Nomads Podcast.
Yep, and if you're listening on YouTube, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you get alerted when we upload so you don't miss it.
Yes, we'll be trying to upload every Friday. So last week we discussed our successes and challenges teaching online music with our friend Sam.
And this week we're going to run down our top 5 things from the most recent cities we were both teaching in Almaty, Kazakhstan, and for Laura, Ashgabat, Turkmenistan.
Yes, so let's get right into it. We're going to start from number 5 and go to number 1 as like our top thing. Once it gets to the last few, I can't really say that one thing is like so much better than another, but yeah, I love a lot of these places.
Right. I mean, it was hard to put them in an exact order for sure.
Yes.
And then I don't know if you said this because it cut out, but we'll also be saying some honorable mentions too. So there's even more things not on my top 5 or honorable mentions that I love too. I just can't name everything.
Yes. And I actually made a top 10 as well as honorable mentions. So some of the things that I don't share today, I'm going to put on the Instagram, either my Instagram or the podcast Instagram, and we'll make sure everyone can see it. Okay, do you want to start with your number 5 or should I?
You take it away, Laura.
Okay, great. So number 5 will be no surprise to anyone. I have chosen the Ashgabat International Airport. And
okay, what makes it so special, Laura?
I know you are wondering. You're like, I know you spent a lot of time there, but is it special? Actually, yes, it is. So number 1, it's shaped like a bird. If you look at pictures, it's literally the shape of a bird. And cool. I just think that's cool. It like signifies, airplanes and flying and all that. Also, the inside of the airport is very unique. It's always like pristinely clean. There are certain offices and like the visa office is different than other places that I've been to. The duty free is kind of interesting. Everything is like really nationalistic, so like you're in Turkmenistan. There's like stars everywhere and pictures of the landscape, and it's just really cool.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean I would say I appreciate the airport for all the places that it got me in Almaty, but it was quite small and not very special, so I cannot say that it made my top favorite
That's
thing.
Okay.
For me, I kind of like lumped a bunch of things into one. But for my number 5, I just said like the nature sites. So there's a lot of natural type of tourist things to do in Kazakhstan as in general. So I guess maybe I'm cheating. It's not specifically Almaty. One of the biggest things that nature-wise that there is in the country is called Charin Canyon. It's like a little Grand Canyon, which funny side story, I had sworn my whole life that I went to the Grand Canyon, and about a few months I never did, and it shattered my world that I thought I did this thing that I didn't. But I've been to Charin Canyon. It's pretty cool. You can do like the lookout from up top or like drive through it, And there's a little like river by it with some yurts. I think you can actually stay there.
Nice.
Something else, they have singing sand dunes, and it's in a whole larger park called Alton Emel National Park. And Genghis Khan supposedly went through there, so there's like some rocks that were like a giant bowl or something dedicated to Genghis Khan. But the singing sand dunes, if the wind like blows a certain way, they make sound. Or what I found as the musical thing is, as we were like walking through the dunes to get down from the top of them, when your feet go in the sand, it like kind of makes a singing noise. But man, walking up a giant pile of sand in the wind is very exhausting.
Oh my
Every
gosh.
step you take, you slide at least halfway back.
Ugh.
And then the other big one that I went to is the petroglyphs. So it's like carvings in different rocks. There's actually a couple different areas, but the one that I went to a couple times is called Tambali. So it's kind of cool to see those cave drawings. But other honorable mentions for that, I guess specifically, is like there's like camel farms, and I sadly didn't get to go to these things because my plans were shattered during the lockdown of when I was planning to go. But there's also Big Almaty Lake, like up in the mountains, and then the other big one I wanted to do was called Posai Lakes or Candy Lake. So they have like birch trees and lakes. So there's tons and tons of like beautiful nature things.
Cool. Yes, my plans were also shattered because my last spring break in Turkmenistan, I was going to do what I called the Great Tour of Turkmenistan, and I was going to go do all the big tourist things that I didn't do, like the number one tourist attraction there. So you know what? It's fine. I have a lot of more unique memories. Okay, we're going to number 4 now. So my number 4 is Kopadag Restaurant, which is on Magdmaguli Street. And so this street actually has a lot of great restaurants and shops, and a lot of the more Americanized ones. So like when we were missing burgers, mostly burgers, but like some other things, I don't know, pizza or whatever, we would go somewhere on this street. But I chose Kopadag to talk about because it was a great one-stop shop for karaoke, meat pie, dancing, and drinks. They had literally everything you could want for like a fun weekend night or whatever. I think so. They also had yurts, which you could definitely eat your meal in, or you could just eat it at a regular table. I also think that you could have maybe slept in those yurts. I know that's like a typical thing for Central Asia, but it's not typical that you would sleep in the restaurant ones. But I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
All right. My number 4 is just like the whole general like arts scene in Almaty. Again, I'm kind of cheating, I guess, by lumping things together. But specifically, there's the Abai Opera House, and they have like ballets, operas, and there's several other places where you can see concerts and things too. But that's like my number 1, and it's at the end of this giant like pedestrian walk, where sometimes there will be like little kiosk type shopping set up outside, and there's a lot of like restaurants up there too. So that's been my favorite, and it's super cheap. Like I would pay maybe like $10-12 to sit within the first like 10 rows of like a big name opera or ballet. Like they did like the Nutcracker, they did Romeo and Juliet, they did Carmen. Like they do like giant recognizable things, and it's stupid cheap. And then along with the music art scene, the art museum has some really cool artwork from like local people too. And even the history museum, they have like some rotating different like historical sections too. So the museums are also awesome. So if you're into like any sort of like arts, like Almaty has something for you, or multiple somethings for you.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna keep trucking on to number 3. So I saw that you were starting to like categorize some things when I was preparing, and so I did a little bit of that.
Okay.
My number 3 is shopping at specifically 2 places, so I'll break them down a little bit. So Bakhtiarlik Craft Fair is one place that I would go a lot. So Bakhtiarlik is a shopping mall, and then the first Saturday of every month they have a craft fair. So different vendors will come in and sell mostly like handmade jewelry or like soap and different things like that. Sometimes you can find clothing or just other random stuff, but it's like pretty much mostly jewelry, which was not a problem because I got a lot of jewelry from there. Then the other place for shopping, which is more of like a tourist thing, not something I would go to a lot, is Talkuchka Bazaar. So I only went a few times for the year, and it's, I would think, a place to find something that's harder to find in the normal shops, like a bicycle or if you want a specific kitchen appliance. So basically, if you think you've been to a bazaar, you have not been to anything like Talkuchka. My best descriptor for it is it's like a giant Walmart, but everything is open air. Like you can find everything that you want. It's over, I don't even know, I would say at least a mile of like shops and stuff. There's just so much. I don't think it's really organized, but if you ask the locals, they can tell you where you would go to find certain things. But there's like, if you want cloth to make like a dress or something, you can find that in any stall. But if you want like tires for your car, you can only find that in one part. So it's just kind of an
Mm-hmm.
interesting place.
Yeah, cool. Um, okay. My next one kind of went with my number 5, I guess, but I felt like it deserved its own because of like, I don't know how much I loved it. It's just the mountain range, the Tian Shan mountain range, and the mountains in Almaty. Almost anywhere you go in the entire city, unless there's something blocking your view, you can see the mountains. They're ginormous and beautiful and amazing. And our school sits like so you can see the whole mountain range behind the school. So it's beautiful. And living on campus, I could see a tiny bit of it when I lived there. And when I lived off campus, I was so extremely blessed to live on the 12th floor. And so I could see like the whole mountain range. It was unbelievable. And I will definitely miss just like looking out my window or walking outside my classroom at school and seeing giant mountain ranges. But something with it too, of course, there's skiing, which I did go as part of a field trip. But with the skiing, thing that I like best is the ski resort. It's called Shimbolak is the big one, but there are several. And you can ride like the gondola all the way up. And there's like a whole platform with restaurants and cafes. So you can just like sit and have your like brunch and like watch people ski down the hill and see like the snow-capped mountains. And then there are a couple other places with it too. You can go to Kobe, which is like sort of an amusement park on top of a hill. So that's also fun, like in the mountains. Oh, and before you get to Shimbolak, partway up, there's what's called Medeu, and it's an ice skating rink. So that's also super cool. You can go ice skating in the mountains. It's so neat.
Pretty
So
giant,
yeah, for
right?
sure. What?
It's pretty big, right? The skating thing.
Yeah, the skating rink is pretty big, and we've gone there a couple times on field trips too. So, I mean, yeah, just the mountains will be one of the top things I will definitely miss about Almaty.
Nice. So if people don't know, I actually got the chance to go to Almaty while Jessica was teaching there. We
Mm-hmm.
have a conference, like a professional development conference for all
Yep.
of Central Asia that meets like every other year, I think. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, every other year.
Yeah, so for the past couple times it's been in Almaty, but I was only working in Turkmenistan for one of those years where we got to go there. So I got to see her and see some of the cool places that she's talking about, but I'm very sad that I didn't really have time to do anything with the mountains. There was too much stuff to do, and I think I mainly chose shopping, but like there's not that much shopping to do in Turkmenistan anyway. So no regrets. Yeah. So my number 2, people, if you're listening and you're from Turkmenistan or you've worked there, I'm so sorry if I say stuff wrong. I'm doing my best. But I'm pretty sure the street that I'm thinking of is called Bitirakli. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, there's just like a bunch of streets in the downtown area, but this is one I specifically remember because we drove through it every day to get to school. And so the best time to drive down there is either at night or in the early morning, just like when it's dark, because all of the shops have giant neon signs like twisted into different designs and like symbols to show what the shops are selling. So like one of the places that I looked at buying jewelry has a big diamond on the side that's in neon, and like the colors will change and move and blink in different ways. So imagine a whole street of that where every shop has different shapes and colors and all moving. It's super cool to look at. And at Christmas time, they have crazy extravagant displays and really ornate trees that's throughout the city actually, which I find interesting because the country is primarily Muslim from what I understand, but there's also a lot of Russian Orthodox people living there too. So even though they're not like nationally known for any religion specifically, they still have some Christmas stuff, which I wasn't expecting.
Probably so. Okay, my number 2, I guess, is similar to like your number 3. The specifically craft fairs, but also like the bazaars, and I will like do a shout out. Like there's some pretty nice shopping malls too, but my most favorite of all the shopping is, I guess, the craft fairs, especially around Christmas time. So they'll have like holiday Christmas craft fairs, and there's a big one that they usually have in the Central State Museum. So you can like go around the different floors, and there's rugs and tapestries and ornaments and like so many beautiful things. Kazakhstan, and I think lots of other places in Central Asia, in my opinion, are pretty big on like tapestries and felt work. So you can find like felt everything in like jams, honey. So the craft fairs have definitely been my favorite. And even some of the ones I went to, some of the people will let you like make your own things or have master classes. So some of the people I've met at craft fairs, we had one of the like silk scarf making ladies, the felt and silk scarves, come to one of our apartments, and we all got to do like silk painting. There's a lady who makes like glass jewelry and like decor, and so we got to like smash up our own little pieces of glass and like make a necklace or like the felt, and I made a flower out of felt pieces. So it was really cool and like interactive depending on which fair you go to. And of course, just like buying all the beautiful things is the best.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'll just quickly, my favorite bazaar is the Green Bazaar or Jeloni Bazaar. There is a giant one similar to like what you were talking about called Barahoka that is like at least a mile, and it's like 2 sides of the street, and it's like ginormous. But I just like get so overwhelmed. Like the Green Bazaar is huge, like it's big, but I can remember where things are. It's not like so big that I can't remember. If I went to Barahoka, I would need to bring a local with me so that I knew where I was going, because it's ginormous. But the bazaars are definitely fun too and have their like souvenir parts, but you can also get, like you were talking about, like tires for your car or a broom, or you can get a slab of meat that's been open in the meat section, or
Love it.
fermented Korean food. Like, so it's pretty cool too. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the first time that we went to Talkuchka, it was like the first week or two after I moved there, and so the school administrative assistant went with us. Like, she grew up there, lived there her whole life, and she was able to help us find everything that we were looking for, or at least translate stuff to different people. And like, if I didn't go with her, it would have been a huge waste of time, because I tried to go another time with my friend from the States, and I was just looking for something that I had seen before in passing, and we wandered around for like 2 hours, and I basically never found it.
Yeah, no, the first time I went was like with our orientation, so like I didn't know where anything was, and there was like a decent amount of us, so we couldn't stay together, but at least I like could ask like where certain things were.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I think I went with a couple of my friends, and like I said, we kind of just like wandered one building, because you can't, unless you have something in mind and know where it is, like you can't just go in and be like, I need a pillow. Like, you won't find it.
Yeah, so now we're going to go into our honorable mentions before we tell you our number ones. So just a few things that didn't really make the top 5, but we still really wanted to mention. And all of mine are food. We are not surprised by that at all, because that's like one of our main forms of entertainment, at least for the expats in Turkmenistan, just trying different things. So the first place I wanted to quickly tell you about is called Umit Restaurant, and I took some notes about this.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's this might not be the name of the restaurant. I'm sorry, guys. I'm pretty sure that it is, but I even asked my friend who lived there, and she's like, I don't really remember. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it's in Five Legs Park, and you can sit inside or outside when you get to the restaurant. It's on one of the top floors, and the seating area wraps around. It's like a pyramid-shaped building. So it wraps around that, and you can see all of the like glittering lights of the city. I mean, I would recommend going at night, because then it's like a cooler view and stuff. But if you were to go there and you were like, Laura, tell me exactly what to do, because I want to have an amazing time, I will tell you. You need to get the cheese plate, a bread basket, and a couple bottles of wine, and you will be set. And it's not too expensive. It's one of the like more upper end places, but it's still nothing that you would compare to the States for like prices and stuff. So Umit Restaurant, everyone, you gotta hit it up. And because I just talked about wine, I wanted to just briefly tell you that my favorite wine of my entire life was in Turkmenistan. It's actually Georgian wine, but Georgia's like pretty close to there, and they have like a good relationship. So it's called Wine Man Wine, and the semi-sweet red or the white. The red is better, but if you don't like red, you can have the white. It's also pretty good. And
I will say though, I am more of like a white wine drinker, but like the Georgian red wine is amazing. So good.
Testament. There you go. Like, even if you hate red wine, you just need to try it, because it's so hard to find sweet reds in the States. Like, basically you can't.
And sweet, good red wine.
Yes. And this isn't too sweet. It's not like Moscato or anything. It's just semi-sweet, like I said. I could get a bottle for, depending on where I bought it, like $6 to $10 most places. And it's just like such a drinkable wine. You can have it with anything. You can just have it with nothing. It's great.
You can just have it with your glass.
Yeah, it's fine. And then my last place for honorable mention is Burt. So it's technically a restaurant and a brewery, but the brewery part is like way far out of the city. So they also have a restaurant where you can try their beers and stuff. But if you were saying, Laura, tell me exactly what to do, I will tell you exactly what to do. You need to get the crackling bread, which I'm going to try and say in Turkish, and please forgive me. I believe it is Jigerdekli Çorik. Yes, guys, roast meat. And pork shashlik and lamb chop. That is what you need. If you're not a pork person, it's okay. Get the lamb chop. It's the best lamb I will probably ever have in my life, especially for the price. So I just told you exactly where to eat when you inevitably visit Turkmenistan.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna try to go through my fast because
Okay.
I had a lot.
Okay.
I'm sure it won't be fast, but I'm gonna try.
But you try it.
So my honorable mentions, I even like grouped these into like large categories. So just like the sort of entertainment type things you can do. If you like karaoke, man, Asia's the place for you. Like everywhere you go, there's a karaoke place, and a lot of them you can get private rooms or you can go in a large room. My favorite place in Almaty to karaoke is called Metro, and I would sit in the main room, and it was never that busy, so you would get to sing 2 songs for your table and then like pass it on. And they also would have like live dancing at 1 a.m. usually, like on the weekends. So they had like the whole like either burlesque get up or they would dress in little like jazz outfits. Like it was very cool. And also there, speaking of entertainment, they had like bowling and pool tables and go-karting. So love that. And then another entertainment type of thing is trivia that they did at Hard Rock Cafe. They had like English trivia. I think it was like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. So that was super fun. And we also have English movies in a couple of the malls. So I know those are all like kind of things you can do in normal life in America, but they were my favorites over there because they made me feel like I'm at home, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then restaurants. There's also a ton of restaurants. So, quick lowdown. Coco Chicken. It is owned by a British man. His fried chicken has won contests, and it is the best. The best fried chicken. Or like chicken strips. Darajani, which is like our chain Georgian restaurant. So, the best Georgian food, you can fight me if you disagree, is hachapuri, but I doubt anyone will disagree with you. It is basically the regular like basic form is sort of like shaped like a pizza, but there's no sauce. Instead of sauce, there's cheese under the cheese. So or you can get it in a little boat shape and they'll crack an egg on it and the egg cooks because the cheese is so hot. Or you can get it my favorite way on a skewer, so it's like the breading wrapped around and they cook it on a giant skewer. So Georgian food. And then I also just in general like the Uzbek plov to just shout out. I do like some Kazakh food, but my favorite foods in Almaty had been like Georgian and Uzbek and all that. There's some good Korean restaurants. And then my more like basic, less daring food places, there's Urban Coffee. It's like sort of downtown, and they have like breakfast food. And then Del Papa, just our local Italian chain. So good. And then I have 2 more things still. So I guess they kind of tie together. So there's a lot of beautiful cathedrals and mosques just to like look at. Some you can go in. And then specifically there's a cathedral called Ascension Cathedral, which is inside Pamphilov Park, which is a park dedicated to some, if I'm wrong, sorry, dedicated to some soldiers from like Russian or Kazakh soldiers during World War II. So there's like giant statues, and then the cathedral is like beautiful in rainbow and in the center, and it's just a giant park. So the whole area of Pamphilov Park is neat. Yeah. That was mine.
Nice.
My honorable mentions.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna go to number one. So the number
Mm-hmm.
one place, and you'll probably notice that my list is more sentimental stuff. Like there's some tourist stuff, but like I said, I didn't really get to do it, and that wouldn't really be where I spend the most time anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
my number one place is Poets Park. And this is where I spent a lot of time, especially in the early days when I was just exploring around my neighborhood. Just like I didn't really feel safe venturing too far out because I didn't speak that much Russian and I didn't know like where other people lived that were my friends or anything. So it has a lot of water fountains. It's not a park like you would expect in the States where there's like playgrounds and kids and like sand and stuff. It's pretty much just an area where they have like manicured grass and nature stuff because
Mm-hmm.
Ashgabat is in the middle of a desert. So the whole city is like, if there's grass, it's because someone wanted it to be there. So the parks are just a great place to enjoy nature and look at all of the cool water fountains. This park also has the great Shah Cafe, which is like if there was a central perk of Ashgabat, it's Shah Cafe. I would always see at least 2 or 3 people from school, whether they were students or other teachers. Like if you went there on a Saturday or Sunday morning, even if you went there at night, there's a possibility you could see someone. They had great food. I tried to sample everything from the menu because I'd been there so much, but I think I still missed a couple of things. But they just were all over the place. They had coffee, different kinds of lemonades. They had some Turkish food, some Russian style food, some Turkmen food, some more like Americanized different offerings. So it was a great place and it was super close to my house. So spent a lot of time in Poets Park.
Cool. Speaking of sentimental, mine is like the most sentimental and cheesy. I think number one ever, and maybe a cop out. But my favorite thing about Almaty was the people.
Yay.
Yeah. So I mean, I think when I was going out, generally speaking, of course, there's like rude people everywhere, but I think especially like the younger generation or like the malls and areas I shop, like we're always very friendly and helpful. But then like specifically like I made some really great friends in Almaty the 3 years that I was there, and people that I think that I will be friends with for a very long time, if not my entire life. And I'm so blessed to have had them because living overseas can be hard at times, and to have those people like is, invaluable.
Mhm.
And then like of course like shout out to my students. I think like I had some awesome students, and even the ones that give you a hard time, like I love them all. They're great, and I will definitely miss working with them, especially under the circumstances that we ended the year.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like the people
Yes.
and my coworkers, and yeah.
Good choice. Yeah, I wish I had thought of that before, but of course, I also appreciate everyone that I worked with and all the students, especially not being able to say goodbye. It was a lot harder to like, there wasn't really a transition. It was just like goodbye, you know?
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I'm sure
Yeah.
that for the adults and stuff, like I will keep up with them for a lot of the time. And I have a lot of students on my teacher Instagram that can keep in touch with me if they want to. So it's not the
Mhm.
end of the world.
No. But like I said, especially when you're like a single person moving overseas, like
Yeah.
those relationships are so important. And
Yeah. And
yeah.
one of my friends said early on, like you will build your relationship so much faster and so much deeper when you're overseas because you need them. You need those other people. So even
Right.
like maybe you would consider, oh, I wouldn't really have as many close friends if I lived in the States. Well, because you can get around. You're driving, you speak English, you can do whatever you want, but you really latch on to those people who can help you in another country.
Right. And you become friends with like people who you wouldn't become friends with
Right.
in the state, or you wouldn't think to. Like, I have, friends who are much older than me that
Mhm.
I consider like some of my best friends.
Mhm.
And like, if I was teaching in the States, I wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards them,
Yeah.
but I'm so happy that I have.
Yes. And it's really interesting to have friends from different backgrounds that you would have never
Yeah.
really considered, like you were saying, and you don't know how they could help you later on in your life. If you're going through a similar thing that they already went through, then you could already
Hmm.
talk to them about
Yeah. Age, culture,
it.
gender,
Yes,
like all of it. Like it's great.
absolutely. So,
Okay, so before we wrap up this week's podcast, we have a question from one of Laura's former students that we're going to talk briefly about.
mhm,
Um, they were interested to hear how kids are different overseas or in the different countries and areas that we've been.
mhm. So I guess I'll start off because we briefly talked about what we would answer, how we would answer this question. And I think I had more of an immediate thought. Like I saw a difference because when I was in Arizona, you had Title I school, a lot of kids
Mm-hmm.
living in poverty or single parent families or families that were both parents working jobs or working multiple jobs. And it was an old mining town. So the mine shut down, and that really started to change the economy a lot. Many families depended on one parent or more working for the mining company or another company that the mining company had brought into town. And so every year, more things were shutting down and more people were having to move out. So that situation affected the students' lives a lot. I think
Right.
they
Mm-hmm.
placed more stake in school because school
Mm-hmm.
was like the only thing that they could count on. That's where their friends were and their teachers. And I think you could say that's true for a lot of schools, but definitely in a situation like this, it was maybe more true. And then in Turkmenistan, it's a private school, so you kind of had the opposite end of the spectrum. We had some scholarship kids, but we had a lot of kids who could afford to pay for that. And maybe they had a similar situation, like their parents were busy working, but they still had the money to be able to do the things that they wanted. So sometimes you saw similar situations like, oh, the kids have like a different moral compass because their families aren't around a lot, but it would come from different situations. I also thought one thing that was really different is the culture of the students and like what the relationship was between the teachers and the students, like what people expected. Because in the States, everyone has social media, everyone has a phone for the most part. And if something happens, you can kind of assume that everyone's going to want to talk about it at school the next day. And in Turkmenistan, there's not as much of that. Some kids are still on social media, but it's not such a giant part of their lives, or maybe they just don't feel like it's appropriate to share it in class or during school. So that kind
Mm-hmm.
of cultural shift was different.
Yeah, I mean, I have some similar things to you, but I think generally speaking, because I taught in when I taught in the States at a school that was like pretty well off area, like middle class families.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's kind of similar, I guess, because my kids in Almaty for the most part too are like middle class families of like, teachers or, higher paying jobs that their parents have. So yeah, they're well off in that sense. But again, like you said, sometimes some of the parents will be gone for extended periods of time and these kids are living with like their nannies or their driver or their older siblings
Mm-hmm.
watching them. So like that kind of thing can be related to some kids in the States. Even though they have more money, they're still sometimes dealing with like social, emotional concerns. But yeah, my kids were hip with the social media in Kazakhstan. Like we didn't have really any restrictions on like websites or apps or anything, so they were all on like TikTok and Instagram and all of that.
Yeah.
One thing you mentioned too is like the cultural thing, and I think for the most part we have like a lot of American kids or kids who are used to American culture, but some of my like younger Kazakh boys, like middle school or late elementary school, I would notice are like more affectionate than like my similar age students that I've had in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And like some of it might be contributed to like I said, that social emotional thing. Maybe they're lacking that. But I also think it's just like a cultural thing. Like they don't think it's weird to like a boy to walk up to their best guy friend and give them a hug. Like, you know. So yeah, that was one big difference that I can think of off the top of my head. But I mean, overall, like I think kids are kids, like everywhere you go, and like they just want to be like appreciated, and they want to have fun, and they care about their friends, and you know, kids are kids.
Yeah. Something else I noticed that I thought of because you were saying that is, like I said before, the relationship between the teacher and the student. I think when I taught in Arizona, the kids felt more like they could share stuff with me, like tell me things that weren't relevant to the content. Like, oh, we did this thing at lunch, or I'm really excited because I get like my ear pierced tomorrow, and like just different things like that. That was cool. And I was able to build some rapport with them that way. But then in Turkmenistan, they didn't do that as much, but they were more willing to share like their time. Like if I hopped onto a different field trip, or they would be like shopping at the mall and they'd want to come say hi, like more interaction that way.
I actually feel like I have the opposite experience, but I think it's more like the class I taught, or like I don't know, because I would see my kids in Minnesota. It was just half a year, and it was like every other day. So like I didn't feel like, and I had so many kids. Like I had like 150 kids, so I felt like it was really hard to build strong relationships with them, seeing them half a year, every other day, like that, and in a general music setting. But on the flip side, like in Kazakhstan, there are some kids that I did build really strong relationships with because I had them like in choir multiple years, or like also in the musical, or even like my elementary kids, like who I had them multiple years, so I felt like I was able to have the time to get a lot closer to them. So I think I mean, of course, like it depends on like where you are, but I also think it depends on like the types of classes you're teaching.
Yep. And the class size and stuff. Like in Arizona, I had smaller. I think I only had like 70 kids for everything. And we also had a lot of mandatory after school stuff. So I had more time to spend with them.
Right.
So next week, we're excited. We're going to have another special guest here to talk about TEFL and teaching abroad English in that way. So make sure to check it out.
And once again, if you have questions or suggestions, the best place to let us know is either on our YouTube comment or on our Instagram page at Nomads Podcast.
Thanks for listening from wherever in the world you are.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.